$99.2 billion, that's India's trade deficit with China just in the last fiscal year. And here's the thing, India banned over 200 Chinese apps, banned Huawei gear from their networks. There's genuine geopolitical tension on the border, and yet $99 billion, more than double what it was the year they started banning stuff. That number alone tells you everything about where China's tech is right now, everywhere, whether you want it there or not. China's tech machine didn't just catch up. In a bunch of industries, and I mean a bunch, it's now out front. EVs, batteries, drones, AI models, solar, ships, space. Not every sector, not chips, not everything, but enough to genuinely reshape who makes the stuff the world runs on. That's what we're getting into today. Start here, 2015. China's government releases a 10-year industrial plan, Made in China 2025. The goal is brutally simple: stop being the world's low cost assembler, become the world's high tech manufacturer. Pick 10 sectors, dominate them. Now, 11 years later, someone actually scored it. The US China Economic and Security Review Commission looked at 260 plus goals, 86% achieved. 86. High speed rail, crushed it. Solar panels, crushed it. EVs and batteries, crushed it. Semiconductors, that one's a problem. Aerospace, still dependent on foreign suppliers. But 2/3 of the plan hitting like that, that's not a failed policy, that's a playbook. Okay, so Tesla, we should probably talk about Tesla. 2025 full year, BYD delivered 2,256,000 all electric vehicles. Tesla delivered 1,636,000, and that was down 9% from the year before. BYD didn't just pass Tesla on BEVs, it lapped them by 620,000 units. That's roughly the entire annual output of a decent sized automaker just as the gap. And BYD's market cap is around $120 to $130 billion, which sounds enormous until you realize Tesla's is around $500 billion and Tesla is losing ground. The math is uncomfortable for Silicon Valley. Now zoom out from the car itself to what's inside it, the battery. CATL, contemporary Amperex technology, makes 39% of every EV battery installed globally, not a third, almost 2/5. Their closest competitor, LG Energy, is at 13%. After that, it drops off fast. CATL's installed 464 gigawatt hours in 2025 alone. That's up 35% year on year. Revenue for 2024 was about 362 billion yuan. Profit climbed 15% even while revenue dipped because lithium prices crashed. They make money when lithium is expensive and they make money when it's cheap. That's what control looks like. Solar panels. This one is almost comical. China accounts for 80% of the world's solar panel manufacturing capacity across the entire supply chain. Polysilicon, ingots, wafers, cells, modules. For polysilicon and wafers specifically, the number is closer to 95%. In 2024, Chinese factories produced 630 gigawatts of modules. 630. The world is trying to decarbonize and it basically has one supplier. Every solar farm going up in Texas, Germany, India, almost certainly running on Chinese components. That's not dominance, that's a monopoly. September 2023, Huawei drops the Mate 60 Pro, analysts tear it apart. Inside the Kirin 9000S built by SMIC on a 7nm class process, no EUV, just aggressive DUV multi-patterning. The US had been specifically sanctioning Huawei to prevent this from happening, and it happened anyway. But here's the part that's actually more interesting. They didn't stop there. November 2025, Huawei launches the Mate 80 Pro. That phone runs the Kirin 9030 on SMIC's N+3 node, 5nm class territory, 2 years, 2 chip generations, still no EUV. Tech Insights confirmed it with a teardown. Now, to be straight about what this means, SMIC's N+3 yield is estimated around a third of what TSMC gets on comparable nodes. They cannot compete on density or efficiency. But the trajectory is the story. From 7nm class to 5nm class in 2 years under sanctions within January 2025. DeepSeek drops an open source AI model that benchmarks against GPT-4. The headline that went everywhere by trained for $5.6 million. Nvidia lost 200 billion in market cap in a day. But let's be honest about that number. The 5.6 million covers the final training run, 2048 H800 GPUs, 55 days. It does not include the hardware itself, which cost around 1.6 billion. It doesn't include years of R&D, ablations, failed experiments. The real number is way higher. But here's what that number actually proved. Chinese labs figured out how to be dramatically more compute efficient than their American counterparts. DeepSeek V4 Pro, previewed April 2026, is a 1.6 trillion parameter mixture of experts model, MIT license. Anyone can run it. That's the actual story. DeepSeek isn't alone. Chinese labs have been flooding the open weight AI space. Alibaba's Qwen team released Qwen 3.627b in April 2026, a 27 billion parameter model that apparently outperforms a 397 billion parameter mixture of experts model on coding benchmarks. Read that again. Bigger isn't always better if you're more efficient. Then there's Moonshot AI's Kimi K2.6. 1 trillion parameters total, 32 billion active at any time. SWE bench score of 80.2. These are not toy models, they run on Cloudflare's infrastructure, they're embedded in developer tools worldwide. The volume of Chinese open weight releases in 2025 and 2026 has been a lot. Genuinely hard to keep up with, and all of them Apache 2.0 or MIT, free to use, IT. Drones. Consumer, commercial, agricultural, industrial, DJI owns 70% of the global civilian drone market. Its nearest competitor, Autel, is at 1.4%, 1.4. DJI doesn't just lead this market, it invented it. The question isn't whether DJI has competition, it's whether any competition is even meaningful. The US put DJI on a defense blacklist, the EU has debated it, India banned it briefly, and DJI's market share is still 70%. That's what building the best product at the best price for 15 years gets you. You become the category. High-speed rail, December 26, 2025, China crosses 50,000 kilometers of HSR. That's not a projection, that's done. To put that in perspective, the entire rest of the world combined has less. The US has Amtrak's Asila, the EU has a decent network, but China just surpassed every other country's rail infrastructure combined. They plan 60,000 kilometers by 2030. And they built most of this in under 20 years. The first HSR line opened in 2008. That pace of infrastructure build is sustained over 2 decades is almost incomprehensible if you're used to Western infrastructure timelines. Shipbuilding. In 2024, China completed 55.7% of global shipbuilding by volume. For new orders, boats that haven't been built yet, China captured 74%. 74% of everything the world ordered to be built on water. China has led global shipbuilding tonnage for 15 consecutive years. The US is so rattled by this that the USTR started proposing port fees on Chinese-built vessels. Basically a tariff on entering American ports if your ship was made in China. Most of the world's cargo ships, tankers, container vessels, China is building them. You might not notice, but every time something you ordered shows up at your door, there's a decent chance the boat that carried it was made in China. Back to India, because this one deserves its own slide. In 2020, India banned TikTok and 200 other Chinese apps. Then they restricted Huawei. There's been genuine border friction, troops, casualties. Prime Minister Modi has a vocal for local policy and Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative specifically about reducing China dependence. And in FY 2024-25, India's trade deficit with China hit a record $99.2 billion, up from $44 billion the year the ban started. The imports include $47 billion in electronics, almost $4 billion in solar panels, and 70% of the active pharmaceutical ingredients that India's own pharmaceutical industry, which is one of the largest in the world, needs to function. You can ban the apps, you can't easily replace the supply chain, that's the bind. The US and EU aren't sitting still. The CHIPS and Science Act appropriated $52.7 billion for semiconductor manufacturing, plus a 25% investment tax credit. Over $540 billion in private investment announced across 100 plus projects. The IRA catalyzed nearly $500 billion in clean energy investment in just 2 years. The EU slapped tariffs on Chinese EVs. BYD now faces a total 27% duty, SAIC 45%. And yet, it takes years to build a fab. The IRA's clean energy supply chain is still heavily China dependent because that's where the manufacturing expertise lives. The tariffs have slowed Chinese EV growth in Europe, but Chinese brands still sold 500,000 vehicles there in the first 9 months of 2025, up 91% year on year. You can't tariff your way to a supply chain that doesn't exist yet. India is trying the hardest of any single country to build an alternative. The semiconductor PLI scheme, $9 billion committed, 10 projects approved across 6 states. Micron opened a chip assembly and test facility in Sanand, Gujarat, February 2026, with pilot production running from August 2025. Tata Electronics has an actual wafer fabrication plant in the pipeline with PSMC from Taiwan. Semiconductor Mission 2.0 was announced in February 2026. The honest framing: India is 5 to 8 years from real front end chip production at scale. That's not a knock. Building this from scratch is genuinely hard, but the gap between ambition and current capability is real, and China knows it. Two more sectors worth flagging because they show the ambition horizon. Space, Tiangong Space Station, 3 modules continuously crewed since 2021. Chang'e 6 returned the first ever samples from the far side of the moon in June 2024. Almost 2 kilograms of material no human has ever touched. Chang'e 7 is at the launch pad right now, targeting August 2026 for the lunar south pole. Quantum computing Zhejiang 4.0, published August 2025. Over 3,000 photons detected in a single run, 10 times more than the previous version. Preprint, not yet peer reviewed, so caveat that. But the trajectory in both fields is China is doing serious work at serious scale with serious timelines. This isn't catch up anymore, this is parallel development. Now let's be honest about the limits, because this isn't a propaganda video. Semiconductors, China's most advanced fab is SMIC at 7 nanometer class per kVA, using older equipment that produces lower yield than TSMC's equivalent. TSMC and Samsung are shipping 2 nanometer chips. That is a multi-generational gap. Aerospace, the C9 and 9 commercial jet is largely dependent on Western suppliers, CFM engines, Honeywell Avionics. Industrial robots, China hit 48% domestic market share versus the 70% target. Even with the Made in China 2025 win rate at 86%, the sectors China hasn't cracked are consequential. Chips, high-end aerospace, advanced robotics precision, luxury goods, there are real gaps. The story isn't China won everything, it's China won what it targeted, and the targets were well chosen. Here's why this is structural, not a fluke. China's R&D spend in 2024, 3.6 trillion yuan, roughly $496 billion, second largest in the world at 2.68% of GDP. And at the end of 2024, China held 4.76 million valid domestic invention patents, the first country to ever exceed 4 million. That's not luck, that's a decade of deliberate investment compounding. Patent applications have been the number one in the world since 2019, according to YPO. The concern in the West isn't that China got lucky with DeepSeek or lucky with BYD. The concern is that the output of this R&D machine pace running at this scale is going to keep producing surprises. So China's tech is everywhere, in your EV battery, on the drone footage you've watched, powering the solar farm down the road, running on the AI model you might have tried last month. The question isn't whether this happened, it happened. The question worth arguing about is this good for the world or is it a risk? Cheap clean energy and cheap AI models are objectively useful. Supply chain concentration is objectively fragile. Both things are true. Drop a comment. Which sector do you think the US, EU, or India can realistically catch up in within 10 years? And which one is just gone? I want the spicy takes. Like and subscribe if you want more of this. See you next time.